Have you ever had one of those nights where um, you're just lying in bed, the room is completely dark?
Right. Just the harsh glow of the phone screen in your face.
Exactly, just the phone, and you are pouring your absolute heart out into a text message to someone.
Oh yeah. We've all been there.
Right, like you're sending your deepest, most vulnerable feelings,
Hmm.
and in that specific moment, under the cover of night, it feels incredibly easy.
The words just flow.
They really do. You're brave, you're articulate, you just hit send without even, like, a second thought.
But then morning comes.
Yes. Then the very next day, you see that exact same person in the physical world, and you completely freeze up.
Oh, it's the worst. The bravery just totally
It's
evaporates.
gone. You can't even look them in the eye, let alone say, any of those deep things out loud.
It's this crazy whiplash, like a whiplash between digital bravery and physical paralysis.
Yeah.
And it's jarring because it honestly feels like you're operating on two completely different nervous systems.
Which is exactly what we're unpacking today for you in this deep dive.
It's such a universal feeling.
It really is. Today, our mission is to explore a deeply resonant poem called Texto. And it captures this intensely relatable paradox, right?
The safety of the screen versus the terror of real life.
Exactly. The profound safety we find in digital connection versus the absolute paralyzing terror of physical proximity.
And what's so great about the source material is that it tracks a very specific and honestly a pretty agonizing journey.
Agonizing is the perfect word for it.
Right. We get to watch these two characters try to navigate their way out from behind that digital safety net.
Yeah, try to make that leap.
Exactly. An actual real world leap of faith for what the text calls their first love. And the author doesn't just, state that they're scared. They actually dissect the underlying mechanics of that fear.
So let's start with the opening scene because it sets a really uncomfortable baseline.
It's painful to read, honestly.
It is. You have these two people who the poem explicitly describes as being deeply kindred. Afins is the Portuguese phrase used in the source.
Tona fins, meaning they are incredibly alike.
Right. They are perfectly matched, and they are sitting right across from each other, face to face.
But totally silent.
Completely mute.
And it's not just that they're quiet, they're actively avoiding each other's existence in the room.
Yeah, the tension is just thick.
The poem says they literally watch the hours pass right before their eyes, and they can't even bring themselves to let their gazes cross. It's like physical proximity is acting like a repellent. The closer they get in physical space, the further away they retreat mentally.
It reminds me of the ultimate form of stage fright.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Like imagine you're this brilliant playwright. You have this beautiful, award-winning script entirely memorized in your head.
You know every single word.
Every emotional beat. And you're alone in your room, reciting it perfectly. But the second you step onto the actual
And
stage,
the spotlight hits you.
the spotlight hits you, you look out into the dark auditorium,
Yeah.
and your throat just closes up. You forget every single line.
See, stage fright is a great starting point, but the reality of this poem is actually, it's a bit more terrifying than that.
Really? How so?
Well, with a play, the script is fixed, right? The audience just sits in the dark. They don't talk back until it's over.
That's true.
But here, the terror is that your script, meaning your raw, unfiltered feelings, it demands a real-time, completely unpredictable response from the other person.
Oh, wow.
The physical presence of someone you care about triggers this massive psychological defense mechanism because suddenly the stakes are tangible.
Tangible stakes. I like that. And the poem gives us a very tactile visual for that defense mechanism, doesn't it?
It really does.
It says they are trying to hide their feelings, certainties, and insecurities behind a fragile and cold shell. The phrase is uma casquinha, frágil e fria.
A fragile and cold shell.
Yeah, hiding feelings and insecurities. That makes total sense to me.
Sure, we all do that.
Right. We do it to avoid looking weak.
Yeah.
But hiding certainties.
That's the tricky part.
Yeah. If you are absolutely certain about something, shouldn't that give you the confidence to speak up? Why hide a certainty?
You would think so, right? But psychologically speaking, a certainty is a stake in the ground.
Okay, go on.
It's a foundational truth about how you view the world, or in this case, how you view this person. So if I am certain that I have strong feelings for you,
Right.
and I reveal that certainty in the physical world, I am now entirely exposed. My internal certainty is suddenly at the mercy of your external reality.
Oh, because if they don't agree with you,
Your reality breaks.
wow. And nobody wants to watch the reality break.
Exactly. If I show you my certainty and you reject it, my inner truth is completely shattered.
That's terrifying.
So by hiding their certainties behind this fragile shell, they're actually protecting their inner reality from being destroyed by the unpredictable physical world.
They're keeping the dream intact by refusing to test it. So the shell is like a preemptive defense. They're guarding the treasure by pretending it doesn't even exist.
That's a great way to put it.
But let's talk about what that shell is made of. The text calls it frágil e fria. Fragile and cold. That doesn't exactly sound like a pleasant armor to wear.
No, not at all. It's cold because it requires them to literally shut off their own warmth just to maintain it.
You can't be radiant while trying to be a stone wall.
Exactly. And it's fragile because it takes a massive amount of cognitive energy to maintain this fake facade of indifference when your heart is basically racing.
Exhausting.
And here is the tragic flaw in that casquinha, that emotional armor.
What's that?
It doesn't just block out the potential for rejection, it simultaneously blocks out the very connection they both desperately want.
Ah, so it works too well.
Right. The physical world, which is literally the only place a relationship can truly materialize, it becomes a trigger for their strongest, most isolating defenses.
So by protecting themselves so fiercely, they're just guaranteeing their own stagnation.
They're stuck.
But they don't stay completely disconnected. Like, the connection clearly exists. It just shifts to a different, safer dimension, right?
The digital dimension.
Yeah. When the physical world goes to sleep, their digital world wakes up. The text talks about the madrugadas.
The late nights.
The late nights and early hours of the morning.
The contrast there is just massive. The exact same two people who are literally frozen statues in the daylight become completely fluent, passionate, and profoundly connected in the middle of the night.
It's like a superpower unlocks.
Yeah, they dream at a distance and they unite through typed words. The madrugadas serve as this liminal space. It's like a time when the rules of the daytime physical world are just suspended.
And the source notes something really fascinating about those typed words. It says they reflected exactly what each of them carried in their heart.
Pure honesty.
Pure honesty. There's no pretense, no games. It even explicitly states that if you were to invert their feelings,
Oh, right, if you swapped them.
yeah, if you magically swap their hearts, it wouldn't change a single thing. Because they are looking for and expecting the exact same things. They are a perfect mirror image match.
Which introduces the central paradox of this whole dynamic.
The distance that unites.
Yes. Usually distance is the obstacle, right?
Right. It's the hurdle you have to jump over to get close to someone.
But for these two, distance is the actual medium of their intimacy. The text specifically says, so a distancia os unia, only distance united them.
You know, it makes me think of the screen as like a kind of invisibility cloak.
And an invisibility cloak, I like that.
Think about it. When you're in the physical world with someone you have a massive crush on, you are hyper aware of your physical vessel.
Oh, constantly.
Like, what are my hands doing? Is my voice shaking?
Am I making weird eye contact or not enough?
Exactly. All of that physical noise just drowns out the heart. But when you put on the invisibility cloak of a text message, you hide the physical self.
They disappear in a way.
Yeah. And paradoxically, by hiding your physical form, you are finally brave enough to let your true emotional self be seen completely naked.
The screen removes the vulnerability of the body, allowing for the vulnerability of the soul.
That's beautifully said.
Well, neurologically speaking, it makes sense. When you remove physical cues like microexpressions, shifting posture, tone of voice, you drastically lower the brain's threat response system.
So you're not in fight or flight anymore.
Right. The amygdala isn't firing off warning signals about being physically observed or judged in real time.
That makes so much sense.
The digital space creates this highly controlled environment where that fragile shell just isn't needed. You have the luxury of time,
To overthink every word.
Yes, to draft, edit, and curate your vulnerability before hitting send. You are entirely in control of the pace of the revelation.
It's almost like a form of sensory deprivation. By stripping away the physical senses, the emotional senses are totally heightened. You get to be the truest version of yourself because you aren't worried about your sweaty palms giving you away. But you can't live under an invisibility cloak forever.
Morning always comes.
Morning always comes. The sun eventually comes up and the madrugadas end. And that forces a confrontation with reality.
It's inevitable.
Because they do meet face to face during the day. But as we discussed, they stay trapped in that mute shell-shocked state.
Statues again.
So what happens when that physical encounter ends and no one has broken the silence?
The text paints a rather bleak and honestly very visceral picture of that aftermath.
Yeah, sad.
We see a scene of physical separation. One person leaves, and as they turn away to go find their mask again, a single tear falls.
Just one tear.
Rolla una lagrima. It's the physical manifestation of the grief over a missed opportunity.
And the one who stays behind is left with a heart beating in pure uncertainty.
Just standing there.
Standing there, wondering if this agonizing cycle is just going to repeat itself day after day. Like, will every opportunity just slip away into silence?
It's heartbreaking.
It's like watching a train leave the station while you're holding a ticket you were just too afraid to hand to the conductor.
That points to a really cruel illusion created by their digital intimacy, actually.
An illusion? How so?
Because they text so deeply at night, their thoughts and their words make them feel incredibly present with one another.
Oh, I see. They feel close.
They feel like they're building something real.
Yeah.
But the poem drops this heavy, undeniable truth on us. A distance wins.
Distance wins.
Distance wins. The digital presence is ultimately an illusion of true presence.
Because it's just words on a screen.
Right. A relationship built entirely on text lacks the friction and the grounding of the physical world.
So when they separate, the text says they try to fool the heart.
They try.
They pretend they can just live their separate, parallel lives and be totally fine. They go back to their routines trying to convince themselves that this digital phantom is either enough or something they can just, walk away from.
And the psychological toll of trying to fool your own heart is immense.
I can imagine.
The result is a profound, echoing sense of isolation. The poem states that even in a crowd, mesmo na multidão, they feel totally alone.
Surrounded by people, but totally isolated.
Exactly. They are carrying this massive, vibrant, unexpressed connection inside them, surrounded by oblivious people, which just makes them feel entirely invisible.
Wow.
The physical mask they wear to look normal to everyone else actually amplifies their internal alienation.
Because the mask forces you to constantly monitor yourself.
You're always on guard.
You aren't just hiding from the other person anymore. You're hiding from the whole world. It's the ultimate backfire, really.
It truly is.
Think about the irony here. They put on the mask, they built that cold, fragile shell specifically to protect themselves from the pain of rejection.
But that exact same protection is the very thing guaranteeing their loneliness.
Yes. They are successfully keeping the bad stuff out, but they are locking themselves in solitary confinement to do it. The armor literally becomes a cage.
And you have to wonder, why do humans do this?
Right. Why do we torture ourselves like that?
Because, as a species, our brains often prefer a predictable, familiar pain over an unpredictable outcome.
That is so true.
The ache of loneliness is terrible, sure, but it's a known variable. You know how to survive it because you're already doing it every day.
It's comfortable in a twisted way.
Exactly. But stepping out from behind the shell and facing potential physical rejection, that's the great unknown.
It's chaos.
It's a chaotic variable, and the human brain, seeking safety, will almost always choose the familiar pain over the chaotic unknown. We seek control, even if that control makes us totally miserable.
We'd rather be safely miserable than riskily happy.
Sad, but true.
It's sobering thought.
Hmm.
But thankfully, the poem doesn't let them stay in that solitary confinement indefinitely.
No, it pushes them.
At a certain point, the pain of the void, the sheer exhaustion of carrying this invisible weight, it outweighs the fear of the leap.
And that void forces a really harsh realization. They realize they deeply miss the person who, every single night, touched their side from afar.
Touched their side. I love that imagery.
Even though they were physically distant, the text says those words were a kind of touch. Those late-night conversations gave rhythm and meaning to their everyday lives.
And the source elevates this connection, right? It gives it a very specific, monumental weight.
Oh, absolutely.
It explicitly refers to this dynamic as o primero amor que conheciam, the first love they knew.
It's a first love.
And it declares that absolutely nothing else could ever replace it.
It's irreplaceable.
Yeah. This wasn't just like a casual crush or some fleeting infatuation. It was foundational to their emotional lives. It was the first time they felt truly seen, even if it was only through a screen.
And knowing that nothing else can ever replace it, that is the catalyst.
That's the spark.
That's the engine that drives the rest of the poem. It's what pushes them to make one last desperate attempt.
They decide they have to bridge this massive, terrifying gap between the digital haven and the physical reality.
They have to pull the script out of their heads and finally perform it on the stage.
But the poem makes it very clear that simply making the decision to try doesn't just magically pave a smooth road for them.
Of course not. Life isn't like that.
Right. It introduces this wonderful, chaotic phrase as peripersias e armadilhas da vida.
The antics and traps of life.
The traps of life. The universe doesn't just hand them a perfect cinematic moment. It throws obstacles and friction in their way, making this final attempt incredibly difficult.
You know, it makes me think of a video game boss battle.
Oh, I love this. Tell me more.
Think about it. The early levels of a game are easy. You're just coasting, figuring out the controls, making no real mistakes.
That's the midnight texting phase.
Exactly. That's the safe zone. But when you finally reach the end of the game, when you are about to win the ultimate prize, the boss battle is the hardest, most punishing part.
Right before the finish line.
The obstacle course right before the finish line is a gauntlet. The game is literally demanding that you prove how badly you want the prize.
The boss battle analogy is highly effective here because it highlights a shift in purpose.
How so?
These traps aren't just a test. They are a generator.
Ah.
The poem tells us that these traps of life don't defeat them. Instead, the friction of these difficulties actually gives them more passion and stimulus.
Dando ainda mais pressão e estímulo.
The friction creates fire.
Yes.
Because if the path had been perfectly smooth, if they had just been sitting in a quiet room together again, their inherent shyness might have just kept them frozen.
They would have been statues again.
They might have slipped right back into that mute state. But because they had to fight through the traps of life, like the logistical nightmares, the misunderstandings, the chaotic nature of the real world, just to get to each other, the struggle itself pushed them.
Exactly. The momentum of that struggle provided the kinetic energy they needed to break through their own shells.
Wow.
The external obstacles gave them the adrenaline required to conquer their internal paralysis. They were too busy fighting the world to fight themselves.
The universe didn't make it easy. It made it necessary.
Beautifully put.
It forced their hand. So it's the end of the day. They have fought through the traps. They finally meet in the physical world, and they finally seal their commitment.
They do. And the author includes a crucial, incredibly delicate detail about how they seal it.
Which is?
They don't have some grandiose movie star embrace. They seal it with a tímido beijo.
A shy kiss.
A shy kiss.
It's such a subtle, authentic detail. It just feels so real.
And it's vital to understanding the emotional truth of the entire poem. It tells us that they didn't magically undergo a personality transplant.
Right. They didn't suddenly become different people.
They didn't shed their core identities just because they decided to be brave. They didn't transform into these bold, extroverted people who confidently sweep each other off their feet without a care in the world.
They are still fundamentally the same shy people who couldn't make eye contact at the beginning of the text.
The fear is still there.
That's the core of it, isn't it? They're still shy. The fear didn't just vanish into thin air.
Not at all.
But what changed is that they chose to act despite the shyness. They chose vulnerability over the fragile shell.
That shy kiss represents a monumental shift in their internal priorities.
A huge shift.
It was a commitment to never abandon their hearts again. Even if honoring their hearts meant being terrified, they finally accepted the chaotic variable.
Because courage isn't the absence of fear, right?
Yeah.
It's acting in the face of it.
It's doing it with trembling hands.
And when you contrast the very beginning of the poem with the very end, the transformation is breathtaking.
It's a complete 180.
They start off as these two statues, sitting across from each other, completely unable to even let their eyes cross. The silence is deafening. The distance is insurmountable, even when they are inches away.
And by the end, after all the waiting and the masks and the tears and the traps, they reach a state of absolute inseparability.
Inseparable.
The text concludes by saying they wouldn't know how to take a single step forward in life without the other person right there by their side.
Passo dar sem que ao seu lado estivesse o outro. Exactly. The physical proximity that once terrified them has become their anchor.
From not being able to look at each other to not being able to walk without each other.
It's beautiful.
What a journey this deep dive has been for you and for us. We started with two kindred spirits paralyzed by physical proximity, trapped behind a cold, fragile shell, absolutely terrified of exposing their deepest certainties to the unpredictable real world.
And we saw them seek refuge in the digital madrugadas, where the invisibility of a screen allowed their perfectly matched hearts to finally connect, proving that sometimes distance is the very thing that unites us.
It provides the safety needed for raw honesty.
But we also saw the devastating cost of hiding,
Right.
right? The tears, the isolation in a crowded room, the realization that an illusion of presence just isn't enough to sustain a real life.
It's a heavy price to pay.
Until finally, fueled by the agonizing threat of losing their first real love, they push through life's traps. They let the friction create fire,
And they seal their truth with a shy kiss.
proving that you don't have to stop being afraid to start being brave.
It's a profound testament to the fact that vulnerability, while terrifying and risky, is the only bridge between a digital dream and a physical reality.
The only bridge.
Because you cannot build a life in the shadows of a screen.
You really can't.
Mm-hmm.
And as we wrap up today, I want to leave you, our listener, with a thought to mull over on your own.
Something to take away.
We've seen how a screen can be a crucial safe space to cultivate a first love when the physical world is just too overwhelming. But as you navigate your own life, think about this. In our modern world, where we can communicate our deepest emotions with just the tap of a button, does the sheer ease of typing our feelings ultimately make it harder to take that terrifying physical step?
It's a great question.
Do we become too comfortable in the safety of the digital realm? Or does it give us the vital, necessary blueprint we need to finally drop the mask and show up in the real world?
It's a question definitely worth asking yourself the next time you find yourself staring at a glowing screen in the dark, wondering if you should hit send or if you should just show up at their door.
Keep reading, keep feeling, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.